portal to the universe. You are listening to Risale Podcasts.
Welcome back, everyone. So you brought us something really thought-provoking to look at today. It's Bediüzzaman Said Nurses, a short addendum to the Word on Paradise on Hell. Now, the title, it mentions hell specifically, but our deep dive today, it's really about getting into some, profound insights from his wider Risale-i collection.
That's exactly it.
We're going to explore things like divine justice, the nature of good and evil as he presents them, and the ultimate impact of our choices.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it, how Bediüzzaman, even when he's focusing nominally on hell, he really uses it to light up these much bigger themes from the Risale-i.
Okay.
You'll see how these ideas about, say, God's power, the meaning of belief and unbelief, divine mercy, even the cycles in nature, they all kind of weave together. It gives you, the listener, a much deeper view than maybe just reading the title would suggest.
That makes sense. And this idea you mentioned of another realm being necessary, that really jumped out at me from the reading. Bediüzzaman kicks it off by pointing to what he calls the glorious and eternal dominicality and the almighty, all-embracing sovereignty of God.
It's powerful language.
It is. And the picture he paints, the earth like a cradle, the sun just a lamp. It's almost like he's saying this huge, amazing cosmic show.
Yeah.
It just can't fully play out in a world like ours that's so...
transitory.
Yeah, exactly. Transitory, impermanent, unstable. All those words he uses. Deficient, imperfect. It feels like the sheer scale of God demands, a better stage.
Precisely. And if you connect that, like you said, to the bigger picture you see all through Bediüzzaman's Risale-i, it's really about the limits of this life, this earthly existence. It just can't fully mirror those divine attributes, the incredible order, the fine-tuning of the universe. It all hints at a power and a wisdom that, they spill over the edges of our temporary world.
Okay.
So his conclusion is, God must therefore have another realm, one worthy of him, permanent, stable, immutable, and glorious. It's like this world is just the introduction.
The preface, yeah. And he doesn't just leave it as his own idea, does he?
No, not at all.
He really emphasizes this, like consensus. He mentions all those of the lumen spirit who have penetrated from outer appearances to truth, and these spiritual poles endowed with luminous hearts, the possessors of lucent intelligence.
It's quite a list.
It is. It sounds like this universal agreement, a whole chorus of wise voices all pointing to this other kingdom. And that's the realm, he says, that God calls us to work towards.
And that really raises a key question for you listening. What does it actually mean to work towards that realm, according to Bediüzzaman?
Right.
His writings, they consistently talk about, sincere belief, doing good deeds, building that deep connection with God. Those are the efforts, that spiritual path that he says align us with that eternal destination described in the Risale-i.
And that consensus he mentions just adds weight to it.
It really does. It underlines how real and important that destination is considered.
Okay, so this naturally takes us to something maybe a bit tougher for some people to grapple with. The idea of divine justice, and specifically what Bediüzzaman calls the unredeemable nature of unbelief. He uses some pretty strong words here.
He does.
Describing unbelief as worthlessness and meaninglessness, even calling it an insult to all of creation. It's framed as denying the whole point, the beauty of God's name showing up everywhere.
A disrespect to all the divine names, yeah. And a rejection of the witness born to the divine unity by all beings.
Cool, that's quite a charge.
It is. But what's really insightful in Bediüzzaman's view here is the reason behind it being so serious.
Okay.
He argues that unbelief, fundamentally, it corrupts man's potentialities in such a way that they are incapable of reform and unreceptive to good.
So it's not just like having a different opinion.
No, it's presented as something deeper, like a profound spiritual condition that actually changes a person's ability to grow, to connect with the divine. Imagine like a compass that's just broken, permanently pointing the wrong way. It can't find true north anymore.
Okay. And he goes further, calling it utter injustice.
Yes, an utter injustice. A transgression against all of creation and the rights of God's names. It's like fundamentally violating the laws of the cosmos, denying the very foundation everything is built on.
And that's where the unpardonable aspect comes in.
Yeah.
He connects it to that Quranic verse about associating partners with God being a huge transgression.
Exactly. It's about preserving the absolute uniqueness and, the sovereignty of God.
Right.
But it's crucial, I think, for you listening to grasp that this isn't portrayed as God being vengeful.
Okay.
It's more about the inherent inherent outcome, as Bediüzzaman sees it, of turning away from the source of all goodness and reality itself. If you connect this to the wider idea of divine justice in the Risale-i, it suggests a universe where our basic choices about belief, especially denying God's unity, have really deep, lasting consequences.
Which then brings us to the other side of the coin. Divine mercy?
Yes, absolutely crucial.
Because if you only look at that severe view of unbelief, it might seem to clash with the image of God as the all-beauteous maker, all-merciful, all-compassionate, that Bediüzzaman also stresses.
And he anticipates that. He addresses it head on.
How so?
He says it's actually of the nature of that mercy not to withhold from man eternal happiness. That happiness is what saves people from the pain of eternal separation. It's like mercy itself demands there be a way to avoid ultimate loss.
That's a powerful way to put it.
And what's really compelling in Bediüzzaman's argument here is how denying eternal happiness would, in his view, actually undermine divine mercy itself.
Okay, explain that a bit more.
He puts forward this really challenging idea for you to think about. If eternal happiness is not given, and if after dying the world is not resurrected in the form of the hereafter, all bounties would be transformed into desire for revenge.
Desire for revenge.
Just think about it. If all the good things, all the love, all the beauty we experience in this life just disappears at death, wouldn't that deep human ache for permanence, for real fulfillment, eventually curdle into the sense of deep betrayal?
Yeah, I can see that. Like being given something wonderful only to have it snatched away forever.
Exactly. A feeling that the system itself is cruel, leading perhaps even to a desire for payback, metaphorically speaking.
And Bediüzzaman says that scenario would force us to deny God's mercy.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Because he presents that mercy as completely undeniable. Self-evident and necessary, he calls it. Unquestionable and manifest, even more brilliant than the sun.
Supported by the testimony of the whole universe.
Right. It's like saying to deny eternal happiness is to deny God's very nature, something so obvious that all of creation points to it.
And he makes it very personal, too, talking about love and compassion.
He does, doesn't he? He suggests that if eternal separation, this endless parting, was the final word, then even our most precious feelings, tender love becomes a great calamity, sweet compassion a great misfortune, that luminous reason a great tribulation.
So our best qualities become sources of pain.
Think about the deepest connections you have, the love you feel. If death is the absolute final end, then having that capacity for deep love becomes a setup for unbearable, unending grief. It's a really powerful way he illustrates how divine mercy, as he understands it in the Risale-i, wouldn't create these profound abilities in us just to have them ultimately permanently shattered.
Which then flows into that beautiful analogy he uses.
Ah, yes.
Between our world and the next.
Yeah.
Specifically, that incredible rebirth of life in the spring after winter seems like death. He quotes the Quran there. Look upon the signs of God's mercy and see how he restores life to the earth after its death. Verily he it is who shall bring to life the dead, and he is powerful over all things.
It's such a vivid image, isn't it? This yearly resurrection happening right before our eyes.
It really is.
And the key thing is the connection Bediüzzaman draws in the Risale-i between this thing we can see happening and the idea of resurrecting the dead later.
How does he connect them?
He argues that the sheer ease with which God brings out this unbelievable variety of life every spring, all the complex order, making countless different species from what look like dead, mixed up earth, it's a powerful demonstration.
A demonstration that resurrection isn't hard for God.
Exactly. If God can manage this massive renewal on this scale every single year, then surely bringing back individual lives is, well, easily within that same power.
And he digs into that further, right? Talking about the creation of hundreds of thousands of species on the page of the earth with the pen of power.
Yes, all coming forth together, interconnected yet distinct. This amazing display of unified creation, but with such incredible detail and perfect order.
It proves two things at once.
That's his point. It proves both the oneness of the Creator and the ease, the certainty of the resurrection. He even compares it to something as regular and undeniable as the sun rising and setting.
It's a way of taking something that might seem, impossible, and making it feel not just possible, but logical, especially when you look at it through the lens of God's power and the patterns we already see everywhere.
Exactly. For Bediüzzaman, the natural world isn't just scenery. It's a constant living textbook, a tangible reminder of God's power to create and, crucially, to recreate life. It's a really potent argument that grounds this big theological idea in our everyday reality.
So, okay, as we start to wrap up this deep dive into Bediüzzaman Said Nursi's short addendum on hell, you, the listener, can really see how his thoughts here aren't just about hell in isolation.
Not at all.
They guide us towards these, well, interconnected, deeper understandings. It touches on the core of divine justice, the sheer scope of God's mercy as laid out in the Risale-i collection, and why, fundamentally, there needs to be life beyond this one to make sense of it all.
And what strikes me as particularly worth pondering, reflecting on these ideas from Bediüzzaman, is how this picture of God's boundless mercy, how it might reshape your own feel for ultimate justice.
How so?
Well, it suggests eternal happiness isn't just like a prize for good behavior. It's presented almost as a fundamental expression of that mercy, a necessary outcome, given the deep longings and abilities we have as humans.
A resolution, maybe.
A resolution, exactly, to the questions and aches that this temporary life inevitably brings up.
And perhaps that's a really powerful insight for you to carry away from this. Think about how this view of divine mercy tied so closely to justice and the promise of another realm. As Bediüzzaman explores it, might shift your perspective.
Yeah, your perspective on the choices you make now in this life and maybe the ultimate meaning of our time here.
It certainly gives you a rich, interconnected way to think about things, and plenty more to explore within the vastness of the Risale-i collection itself.
Have listened to the Risale-i podcasts, Portal to the Universe. For more, please visit risalenurtv.com/podcasts. Goodbye.